Okay, let me go ahead and finish these problems for you in case you couldn't do them by yourselves. So I believe on this one we were saying that to find the x-intercept we would cross off the y part because that would equal 0. So 5x would equal 10, so x would equal 2. And really I just put my finger over this. So if I put my finger over the 5x, we pretend that's not there, and negative 3y equals 10. Well, that one doesn't come out so nice, but it's okay. It's negative 10 thirds, negative 3 1/3. They don't have to be perfect, so it's 2 on the x and negative 3 1/3. So they're right about there. And then we can just draw the line, because we really only need 2 lines. So all the rest of the points on that line would be answers for that problem as well. All right, to do these last 4, write the equations in standard form. Now we have to understand standard form. That's our ax plus by equals c. So things to remember, we want the x and the y on the same side. And then there's 2 little rules you have to remember. Okay? The numbers will not be fractions. So we don't want any fractions in our problem, so we're going to have to take care of those. And then the number in front of the x has to be positive. And that would be true standard form. So on this first one, if we move the x over to this side, we'd have negative 3x plus y equals negative 4. I don't have any fractions, so that's good, but my number in front of my x is negative. So I want to change that to positive. If I change one of the people's signs, then I got to change all of them. So that would be minus y equals positive 4. It's just that simple. All right, we're going to move the x to the other side, so it becomes negative 2/5 x plus y equals 2. Now I don't want any fractions, so how am I going to get rid of this 5? I'm going to multiply by 5. If I multiply this by 5, I've got to multiply this by 5 and this by 5. So if you do it to one thing, you have to do it to all of the things. Now the 5's cancel, and I end up with negative 2x plus 5y equals 10. And now I need to make sure the number in front of x is positive. It's not, so I'm going to change it, which means I have to change everybody's sign. Now things to notice here. If we were to graph this problem, we would use the b and then the m. Okay? We would get the exact same line if we used the x-intercept and the y-intercept to do it this way. So you're not changing these lines. These two are the same line. It's just written in a different form. This is y equals mx plus b. This is standard. Okay? Now they make you go the other way sometimes. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So you basically want to get y by itself. Whoops. Spelled that correctly. Alright, so if we want to get y by itself, we're going to move the 2x over to this side. So negative 3y equals negative 2x plus 6. Notice I put the x part in the front every time because that's where the mx always goes. Now I'm going to divide by negative 3. And I do these all separately because I want these m and b to be separated. So these cancel, and I get y equals positive 2/3 x minus 2. Again, this graph and this graph are the same line, just in different forms. I don't know why I numbered this one number 3, but wrong number. All right, now this really is not in standard form because if you look up here at our rules for standard form, we can't have any fractions. So this really is not called any particular form right here. You could still use the intercepts to graph it, and if you cover this up, solve that little problem. So the method that I taught you before would still work, but this is not called standard form because of the fractions. But we want to get it into y equals mx plus b form, so get the y by itself. So negative 2/5 y is equal to negative 1/2 x plus 1, because we moved the 1/2 over. Now I've got to get rid of that 2/5. And I really want the whole thing to turn into the number 1. Some people at this point would say, well, I don't like these fractions, so let's multiply everything by 10, and you can do that, okay? So if you did that, then that would get rid of all the fractions, and you'd still have to take care of this 2 onto the y. So another way of doing it is you could say, well, to get rid of this whole thing, I need to multiply by negative 5 over 2, the reciprocal. Well, if you multiply that by negative 5 over 2, we have to multiply this by negative 5 over 2, and this by negative 5 over 2. On this side, these all cancel, so we end up with a y, which is what we wanted. Here we just have to remember, how do you multiply fractions? You just multiply the tops and the bottoms. We get positive 5/4, and 1 times negative 5/2 is negative, oops, we don't need to put 2 negatives, just 1, minus 5/2. So fractions are okay in this form. So you need to make sure you know the difference between slope-intercept and standard form.